Hello, everybody. I am here a little bit early. Just wanted to wait until others come up. Okay, for some reason, I'm unable to see your comments. Let me see, double check here, the page, and then I will, hang on. One thing I can do is just do it over my phone as well. So it's not quite 2 o'clock. We're going to start at 2 o'clock. So let's wait about 5 more minutes and then we'll start from there. Not quite 2 o'clock. We're going to start at 2 o'clock. All right, guys, I'm just working one little technical issue and then we'll get started in just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to be working with my laptop, which I have in front of me, and then also my phone. And I can look at your questions on my phone, not on my laptop for some reason. There's always technical issues, always. So it's okay. All right, a couple more minutes. Now, if you have any questions, just feel free to send a comment and I will respond as soon as I check my phone over here. I just have it down here. I have to use both. There's a bit of a delay on my phone, so I will be answering as I go. Thank you for your well wishes, Marcel. Gracias. Okay, this is great. I wish I was able to see those of you who have actually signed in. And I don't think I can do that. I can see your comments on my phone. However, I cannot see who is joining us. Okay, we will start in just a matter of seconds, in just a little bit. All right, so it's 2 o'clock. It's time to begin. And thank you so much for being here. Welcome. Welcome to my studio, to my place of work. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí. Estoy muy contenta. I'm just going to do a little few words in Spanish just because I know and I see a lot of your comments of dear friends and people who speak Spanish. Muchísimas gracias por conectarse y por ser tan puntuales. I know it's very hard, especially for a Venezuelan, to be on time. I know how it goes. It's almost like Venezuelans are, we're pretty much genetically programmed to be late. That's one of the things that have really been hard for me living in this country. But, 25 years later, I'm still grappling with it. So with that said, wow, this is great. There's about 34 people already signed in. This is fantastic. And hopefully more people will join us as we continue talking. So I expect this conversation or this dialogue to last for about half an hour or so. And the idea is just to talk a little bit about my trajectory, how I've arrived to where I am right now. Thank you to the Latino Cultural Center, to Rosalinda for inviting me to do this conversation. Thank you to Benjamin Spino as well for, allowing for this space in these crazy times of pandemic, right? But allowing for this virtual space and for artists to open up our places of work and kind of reach out to the community, to friends, and to open up our spaces. One thing that's kind of interesting is that artists, in particular painters, we tend to have, to be rather insular. This is a rather insular endeavor, if you will. So because, you're painting alone, you have your iPod, you have your music, your, whatever you're listening to, a podcast or whatever you're listening to, and it's really isolating. So it's very nice to be able to open up the studio and then bring in people close to what we have. I mean, I have back here, I have a work in progress, and some in the back I have not quite finished. Sometimes it takes me years to finish. The other day I was having a conversation with a friend of ours, and he said, oh, how long did it take you to paint, finish this painting? And I responded to this person, I said 22 years, which is about about the amount of time I've been painting. And the reason being is that, sometimes, well, first of all, it's very hard to finish a painting. And also things sometimes just linger in the studio for several years. And then it's not until something happens that, then you say, okay, I need to stop right now. That doesn't mean that you're painting or that I am painting constantly for, 20 something years. But these are works that are kind of re-emerge over and over, and then they get finished. And sometimes, there's works that are finished in a matter of a month. So it's interesting, and you never really know exactly when something's going to finish. The other day I mentioned this to some students, like, you finish when you stop, and sometimes it's just really hard to stop. So how did I get here? Why an artist? Did I choose this profession? The short answer is no. The short answer is almost like, okay, it chose me. The long answer is that it just took a really long time for me to set up a particular, professional practice. And it's, sorry, I get distracted with your comment. Sorry about that. So I am from Venezuela. Those of you who are catching up a little bit of an accent, yes, I'm from Venezuela, from South America, north of South America. I've been living here for about 25 years or so, give or take. Small hiatus in there, and then we moved back. But overall, it's been about 25 years. Always in Dallas. We've never moved, outside of Dallas, and we love it here, actually. So um, when I was a college dropout. I never finished my studies in Venezuela. I started working. I decided to, I wasn't ready really to delve into this profession. It's not something easy. It's especially when you don't have that much support from your, immediate family, and that's okay. That's fine. But I started working, and work was great. I loved working. And it wasn't until I had a family, actually, that I decided to go to school and to finish, not just and earn not just one title, but two, actually. It's almost like, okay, I really like getting, when I got into the student mode or the student bug, it just bit me. I couldn't stop in a way. But the other thing is, I was older, I was a little bit more mature. I think the critical voice was, and that's something that I'd like to talk about in just a little bit. The critical voice was kind of a little bit more quiet then. It's still there, of course. We all have it. We're all our worst critics. And as I speak, one thing that I'd like for you to do is think about your own trajectory and your own life and how you have arrived at where you're at right now. So the idea for me is not just to talk about me, but also for this talk to in a way resonate with your own experience. And I think that will make a very successful, in my opinion, a very successful conversation. Whenever you can actually pick pieces here and there that with which you can relate to. So be mindful of your own journey, because we all have one. Whether you were a child prodigy and you graduated super young, or whether you graduated, whether there are differences or common ground between my experience and yours. Think about that. Think about, and also what I'm talking about kind of, sparks in terms of memory, in terms of your own experience, of course. So for me, it was very important to actually, earn a degree. I really wanted to do, to finish. It was almost like a chip in my shoulder that I hadn't finished my career or my studies when I was much younger. But um, and anyway, I had a family. It wasn't easy at all. It was a lot of work. But at the same time, you know what? It was fun. I loved every minute of it. It was a major challenge. It took a lot of stamina and a lot of hard work. But what do they say? What is the success? What is the secret to art making? And I think basically you can actually translate this to any profession out there. Well, the secret is very simple. It's 10% talent and 90% hard work. You can put it into any realm or any area of work. So, talent, of course, it's one thing, but if you are not a hard worker, or you don't challenge yourself, that just makes things a little bit harder, or sometimes even impossible, to be honest with you. So again, one degree, I remember I had a great professor of mine, Don Taylor, who just retired after almost 50 years teaching, 47 years teaching. And he said to me, when I had finished my bachelor's, we were here at home, doing a little gathering, a little celebration. And he looked at me and he said, Marian, you have to now work in your studio for some time, and then you're going to go back and earn a master's. And I said to him, you're absolutely crazy. I didn't say it in those terms. I actually said kind of bad words because I curse a lot. But anyway, uh, so I thought that that was just impossible, and that I wasn't going to be able to do it. But of course I did. So that's the other thing. I think it's important to find a mentor, find someone that pushes you, someone that, even if you have a lot of resistance or you don't like that much, be aware of that. Think about what that person is trying to teach you and what that person's trying to, push you or steer you to or from. I think that those are intuitive keys that are important to have in life, really, not just when you're a student. What else? The single most important thing that I learned in school, by far, the one thing that I absolutely learned in school was actually learn how, the ability to study and the ability to learn, to find new knowledge. And I like to think of myself as a lifelong learner and student. And that's one of the reasons also why I teach, because, teachers are the ones that learn the most. And so that's actually another little secret there in teaching. And of course, I'm in a profession that, can be challenging in terms of economically. And most artists, we have to have other sources of income, and teaching art is a very good one to go into. It keeps you connected to the field, and also you're actually utilizing your skills and transmitting information and knowledge to the next generations. So I find that very important. So what else? How about if we take a couple of seconds? I mean, I know you guys have access to your chats, and I would love to ask you, what do you think art is? What is art? And let's take just a couple of minutes to try to define that kind of elusive concept of art. So I'm reading here, and if you can just type in, anything really. This is not an exam. It doesn't have a grade. It's just for us to do a little experiment here through this virtual medium. Don't be shy. No need to be shy. Wonderful. So I hear there's great comments are coming. Um, Art is the use of skill and imagination to create a beautiful object is one. Fantastic. An imitation of life, expression of feelings. Art is the way the soul talks. Art is anything, I hear. A means of self-expression. Art is love and passion, self-expression. I'm just reading as they come. One of the many ways of self-expression. Oh, wow, this is so interesting. Art is a conversation between the artist and the audience. Life itself, oh, an expression. Art is an extension of myself and how I see the world. Wow, guys, this is fantastic. These are like, you would be my top students in my class right now. Joy, somebody said joy. I think that joy is very important and it's constantly overrated when we're talking about art. I always say to my students that are getting too caught up on, a problem in painting or in design or in drawing, I say, look, relax. We're not operating on someone. We don't have someone's lives in our hands. Uh, another comment, going to another world. Uh, art is learning. This is fantastic. Oh, I love it. So art is all of these, and we can actually summarize it or put it in kind of like a little, if you will, definition. And art is an expression of an idea, an emotion, and of course, we have to say it's inherently human, right? But art, oh, let me just read here. Art is learning, and then art is an extension of myself and how I see the world. Absolutely. These are all right. But with all of your comments, we could say that art is an expression of an idea, of a feeling through the use of a medium, right, with its corresponding skill. And we're going to talk about skill in just a little bit, right? Because skill, it's something that takes time to, whether you take a lot of time or you don't take that much time, because it comes a little bit more natural. You have to take time in order to learn or to master a skill. Through the use of this medium, right? Art is an expression of an idea, an expression through the use of a medium and its skill that has meaning, that has kind of a purpose, if you will. Now, somebody here mentioned, let me scroll down, that art is a conversation between the artist and the audience. And that's very interesting because an artwork could have a particular meaning. So the artist's intention can be one, right? However, the audience is actually finalizes the work in itself. Once you put the artwork out there, the audience actually takes in a way charge, right? And then the audience, through their filters, through their biases, we all have them, by the way, whether they're, for whatever reason, we all have biases. So the artist, the audience in a way finalizes uh, the perception of these ideas or meaning that the artist is trying to create. So there's a sense of like lack of control in a way in the artist once the work actually goes out into the world. So I love that little kind of definition because it sort of encapsulates all of the ideas that you guys had. But I think it's very important to add the idea of skill and technique and medium, right? Material. So the work that I do is painting, basically. And I do some printmaking, although I've been kind of a little bit, not lazy, I'm really busy actually. But that's something that, I will tackle in the next few months. So yes, and I love the idea that art is actually a dialogue. And also the other thing, creating, making is something radical. Think about that. It's not merely choosing, right? Choosing can be a little bit passive. Choosing is almost like having options. And then the person comes around and says, yes, I want this, or I want this color, or I want this size. But making, the artist has great agency in its work. And of course, we're talking about one kind of artist. There's many ways of being an artist, right? You could be a Sunday painter, or you could be an artist that, more of an amateur. You could be a professional artist, you could be a contemporary artist, but we're talking about more like a contemporary practice approach in this case. So with that said, when the Latino Cultural Center approached me about doing an exhibition, and this whole conversation is happening because of this, I'm going to have, or we were supposed to be opening a large exhibition on November 14th of this year. But of course, because of the pandemic, it was postponed for next year, of course. And we don't know exactly when it's going to fall. I think mid to late 2021. By the way, those of you who've been to the Latino Cultural Center, which is a fantastic venue, it has two gorgeous, gorgeous galleries. I was like, yes, I'm the yes person. Let's do this. And I had my little sketchbook and I started, I got all the blueprints and I started planning. And then I thought, okay, we're looking at about 40 paintings, 35 to 40 paintings. And that was a little, okay, made me think about it. Now, with that said, it's a great challenge. And I mean, not to mention that a great honor for me to show my work. And one of the reasons why I think it's because they also want to showcase an artist, a Latina artist, and like me, who works on, or I'm very connected to where I'm from. I like to think that my work is kind of representations of the topology of Venezuela, of the landscape of Venezuela. But there's many kinds of landscapes, right? As there are many kinds of artists, there are many kinds of everything, right? So for me, my work is about, um, and of course, it's kind of shifted and have changed about sort of the changes that the country have gone through in terms of the political response of the landscape to the last 20 years of dictatorship. So as I moved here 20 something years ago, and I would go back to Venezuela every year or every 2 years, I would see this deterioration in the landscape, this kind of a estrangement and shift. And of course, when you live there, you don't get you get used to it, right? It's almost like the method of how do you boil a frog, right? You put it in cold water and then you slowly warm up the water, right? The frog gets used to it and it doesn't jump. If you put the frog into hot water, it would just jump away directly. So it was rather interesting to see myself kind of away from where I'm from, right? Never really being from here. I'm always going to have an accent. I'm always going to be asked, where are you from? I'm always going to be asked, constantly to this day, I'm asked that. And it doesn't really bother me anymore. I usually counter with, well, where do you think I'm from? Or where are you from? But anyway, what was interesting was that, I felt that I couldn't really stop thinking about the landscape of Venezuela and how to actually represent it. And when I started, and this was about 2008, that's when I really started delving into this theme of Caracas specifically. So I've done a lot of painting through it. I've done some installation work. Oh, I'll give you a heads up. So I have a prototype here of a work of art, and this is a prototype for a very large installation I'm doing for the show at the Latino Cultural. Again, it was going to be opening this November, but now it's going to be opening next year. So let me show you guys what it looks like. So those of you from Venezuela might recognize a bit some of this imagery. Let me try to put it, okay, there we go. It's a little bit more straight. So again, this is a prototype of the work, and this is going to be much larger, and several of these modules together installed on a wall. And then also, the other thing that, for the longest time, my work was very red, more sort of direct, had a lot of violence in it. And slowly but surely, I've been kind of shifting a little bit and focusing more in more recent months, I would say, well, years, in about 2 years, about 2018. So 10 years after I started this series on Venezuela, I started looking into the beautiful parts as well, the beautiful architecture of Venezuela, or in Caracas in particular, because it's a mountainous city. It's actually a very, very sort of narrow and long valley. It's about 25 kilometers wide and about 5 kilometers, long and about 5 kilometers wide. So it's a very long, narrow landscape, if you will, but it's surrounded gorgeous, gorgeous mountains, and of course, construction as the city has expanded. And of course, the topology is not something exact, right? Or static. It's something that actually changes with the times, right? It grows and expands, and then it also contracts. And all of these changes have also occurred, of course, in Venezuela, sometimes, or in Caracas, where more aware than other times. But remember, in the scheme of things, humans, we live a very short period of time, of even though it feels like nowadays we're living so much, right? So much has been going on. I felt like this year, it's almost like we've lived, I don't know how many months. My goodness, it's been a little bit daunting. So these paintings that you see in the back here are a little bit more colorful. I've also been thinking a lot about I'm very sort of attracted to the oil wells and their geometry, even though I'm much more of an expressive painter, or I can be more of an expressive painter. These structures actually here, like this one here, helps me kind of slow down, and it slowed down my painting. And again, this little painting here, it's not finished. The other thing that I do is I actually work very large and then I work very small. So there's practical reasons for that. Sometimes the large works, something that you can do, you can create a mark very quickly, and you can change a large piece of, large painting such as this one here, sort of very quickly, right? I mean, yes, some of the edges take a little bit more time, but I'm not worried about, them being too perfect. However, being enveloped by a large scale work, by a large painting, and sometimes I had, like, prior to these two paintings here, I had 5 canvases, about 4 feet tall, 5 feet tall by 4 feet wide. And so there were 20 feet long canvases, and so it's a massive painting, and it almost like they envelop you, right? It's almost like you really have to step away to grasp the composition, to look, and make all kinds of decisions in them. I mean, in a way, sometimes I just flip some of the canvases. So anyway, but it's very good for me, for my practice, to have this little easel here set up with a 12 by 12 inch painting. It's very nice for me because, number one, I can step away from a large canvas. These are 5 by 6 feet. And then, that 12 by 12 kind of helps me slow down and work some ideas in a more sort of detailed way, always square. And I can show you guys, I'm going to give you a pan, if you will, of my studio. Pardon the mess. It can be very messy in here. Let me see. I don't want to drop anything in the way. I'm always like surrounded by stuff on my desk. But if you see here, behind this blue painting over here, there's a bunch of canvases. These are the series of 5, 6 canvases that I had prior to these two. And then, of course, this is the tiny little one here, and I always have paper. And then let me give you a pan out of my studio right there. Back there, those are my little itty bitty canvases that I work in between the large ones. And then that's my palette, which you can see it's on wheels. And then my books that I love, they help me also kind of inform my work. So with that said, some of you might be able to recognize this little house here. So I'm looking at architecture, in particular at a neighborhood in Bellomonte. It's those of you who are from Venezuela might remember. So what I was saying is, no, I don't usually plan out the large pieces. I start sort of in a very washes, watery applications of paint, and then I start building up. But yes, it can be kind of intuitive, the work. So Marian here is asking me if I plan them. I usually don't. I usually do have a series of, I always have one of these things with paper, and then I will have, for example, the little piece over here, I would draw it, and sometimes then I incorporate them rapidly, either in the small ones or the big ones. Isn't that a contradiction that the small ones usually take me more time than the big ones? It's funny. People sometimes wouldn't believe it. But the slow ones really make me slow down. It's funny, maybe because I'm working with really small brushes. And then, of course, the big ones are very time consuming as well. But again, if you're using a brush, let me show you guys, like this, right? You are going to create a big mark, whether you like it or not. So hang on, let me show you here. I have, for my small ones, I would use something like this, maybe like a size 4 or a size 2, something rather small. I take really good care of my brushes. I've had some of these for a very long time. So it's interesting, right? I mean, the materials. And um, anyway, but I wanted to kind of shift a little bit about the idea of the importance of having a sense of history and the responsibility that we have as artists. So number one, what is the responsibility of the artist, right? The responsibility of the artist is to actually express or convey, or if you want, illustrate, whatever word you'd like to use, what we have to live, what we get to live in this time, in this very short period of time that we're going to be alive. One thing that I always tell my students, and of course I teach, first, second year college, and I always tell them, guys, we're all dying. That's the one thing that we're sure of, that the one thing that we can be sure of when we are born, right? That we're all dying. And it's always like, it's so funny always to see their expressions in their faces, like, oh my God, that is so true. So anyway, the idea of having a sense of history is very important, and having a sense of what was done before you. So what are some of my inspirations for this work? Believe it or not, I am absolutely passionate and a lover of medieval painting and tapestry. There is such a wonderful naivete approach to it, that kind of like a sense of freedom, if you will, because these medieval artists were not preoccupied with perspective, or like the Renaissance and proto and Renaissance artists were concerned with this mathematical approach to space, and the paintings were rather analytical. Medieval works are, in a way, much more free. Right, the representation of the space or the human is about representing more of the soul, right? So anyway, that's a big, 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 important source for me. I'm looking at your yeah, absolutely. Here I have a good friend, Aditi, saying that the responsibility of the artist is to be true to oneself. Absolutely. I think there's a great degree of honesty that has to be within you, honesty, and also I would say humbleness. Number one, because we're so incredibly privileged to be able to spend the time in order to do this, to live at a time where, I don't have 20 kids to tend, or, that I have the freedom and the agency to do what I love to do. That's, guys, believe me, I'm very aware of that. But medieval paintings, tapestries, and then I love any artworks, well, not any, but a lot of artworks that are, political. I love, out of the contemporary artworks, I'm thinking, Barbara Kruger, she has this fantastic work that says, I shop, therefore I am. Shirin Neshat with her Unveiled series. These are work by women that are overtly political, and I think these works are fantastic. Doris Salcedo, she's from Colombia. Love her work. Adriana Varejão, she's a Brazilian artist. I think she lives in Rio de Janeiro, and she grapples with this idea of post-colonial Brazil identity that I find fantastic. A lot of these works you can find at the Blanton Museum in Austin. I've seen a couple of her pieces there. Love the playfulness of Lygia Clark, one of the artists from Sao Paulo, I believe. Yes, I believe so. Don't quote me on that one. And then the profound beauty of Felix Gonzalez Torres. So there's a work, and I'm just going to mention these rather quickly. But again, wow, there's so many, I like to say that I'm an equal opportunity lover of art. I'll see everything. And then, and then my brain very quickly decides what it likes and what it doesn't. But it's equally important to be aware of both, to be aware of what you like and to be aware of what you don't like and what you need to kind of walk away. And sometimes what you don't like would actually give you more clues, and you should pay attention to that than just being kind of complacent and just only pursuing what you really like. That can be a trap. It's almost like falling into the trap of the skill versus the artwork. You know, skill can sometimes be a trap, and this might be a travesty, but it's easy to kind of hide behind skill, and that can endanger your artwork in terms of its message. Or also it can, serve as sort of a screen, because it's, you're vulnerable when you're making artworks and you're showing them. People are going to judge you. It's the nature of the beast. Nobody's judging out there. I guess other engineers are kind of judging someone's coding, but art, it's rather overtly, it's like people go into your shows and they say, oh, I like, I dislike. And a lot of people don't even take, the time to really look into the works. Do you know what is the average time that a person spends in front of a painting at a museum? Think about it. Just, you don't have to answer. Just think about it. I've had people say, oh, 30 minutes. Oh, 10 minutes. No, it's actually like 13 seconds. So, I mean, think about that. And in 13 seconds, people make these, final judgments. So yes, for an artist, it's very important to, you're in a vulnerable position. Somebody's asking me here, what do I think? Oh, and by the way, I expect your questions, please. I need to wrap up in just a few minutes so we don't go too far. It was supposed to be about half an hour. I mean, street art, I think it's fantastic. I think that street art is a whole language, and it's a language for others. I think it might be sometimes exclusive in that it's a language for other street artists, whether it's about marking a territory or sending a political message. I particularly admire and love street art. Also, I don't think I could be up all night working on a mural. I guess if I had to, but I need my 8 hours of sleep. Um, so yeah, Elena, I hope that answered your question. And if you haven't, I hope you've seen the documentary Exit Through the Gift Shop, which is absolutely fantastic. I'm not sure where you can find it, maybe Netflix but Google it. Exit Through the Gift Shop is absolutely. Oh, David is asking, I understand you play the guitar. How does it work how does your work in music affect your visual art? Absolutely. That is a fantastic question. So I took up playing the guitar very recently. So early this summer, I started just taking a weekly class online, and I absolutely love it. And by the way, I'm not musical, I'm musically illiterate, but I think it's very important to keep learning new things. And I can almost feel new connections in my brain, being made by trying to decipher notes and trying to move my fingers in way. And I have high dexterity, of course, in my hands, but by trying to move in ways that they've never moved before. And I have the most encouraging teacher. He's fantastic. And he's just kind of a cheerleader. And by the way, it's not like it's all good. No. I think also that when you're starting to learn something as an adult versus as a child, it's a very different dynamic, and it's something that I'm enjoying very much. I like to call whenever I play or practice in the guitar a form of meditation, a form of actually kind of stepping away from everything and centering myself. It's almost like doodling in a way for others, what doodling can be. It's rather nice. I'm enjoying it very much. And no concerts anytime soon, guys, so don't count on that. Another question, is there a hierarchy within the arts? Absolutely, there's a hierarchy. And a hierarchy that it's pre-imposed by the market, unfortunately. Like in everything, money talks. And there's a hierarchy in the sense, well, I think, first of all, that arts especially after World War II, or what we call contemporary artist works, or postmodern or contemporary works, to this day, I think that the field has opened up much more, and it's much more heterogeneous than before. That then the hierarchy used to be definitely painting, and then sculpture, and then sort of one of the last one was prints or any works on paper. And then, of course, in the early 19th century, the invention of photography changed all that. But I think to this day, I mean, if we see what sells and what doesn't, but I think painting is kind of up there, usually taking in, the most or challenging, or not challenging, but raking up, I guess, the highest prices. But I think more and more collectors are open to new forms of art making, of installation, of photographic recording of happenings, of ephemeral art that doesn't last. So, I mean, I'm interested in many forms, and I think that all of them can inform. But unfortunately, yes, I would say that there's still a hierarchy, whether we like it or not. I dislike it very much. Let's see. It is a challenge to create a piece of art that holds a person's attention. Absolutely. Yes, there is. And I think that speaks to sometimes our shortened attention spans, and also the lack of I don't know, curiosity in the part of people out there. We're used to kind of scrolling down. It's kind of the Instagram, Facebook, social media thing, right? I mean, there came a study from Ireland, and I don't have exactly, I heard it on the radio, that medical students were actually being sent to drawing and painting classes so they could actually develop fine motor skills, because we're losing them out of just using cell phones and smartphones, right? So imagine if we have, we don't have, or we have the attention span of mosquitoes nowadays, most of us, right? Imagine what it takes, for somebody who really needs to have a high level of skill. With that said, and I was talking a little bit about skill and art a few moments ago. Oh, whenever I do want somebody that actually has a high skill, in the case that somebody, has to have a surgery, myself or a loved one, but not so an artist. I don't care about a skill level. And in fact, my students come into classes, and I don't mind if they've never held a brush before. They're going to do the same projects as more advanced ones. And then we can learn from one another. Let's see. Art assimilation to capitalism. Absolutely. I mean, this, Elena, this question or this comment on arts assimilation to capitalism is not new. It's something that happened the moment that we would stop painting on cave walls, and paintings happened on a piece of wood that could be exchanged for something else, or that a beautiful something could be made. I think the idea of beauty and art, and of course aesthetic, is inherent to art making, and also to capitalism, to the idea of exchanging, monetizing. um, in that sense, I feel very privileged to be able to hold a job that helps me maintain my practice. Otherwise, I would be very poor if I would just to live out of selling works. But that gives me a lot of freedom. So that's another issue. But yes, always arts and capital have been, together ever since, for millennia, actually. All right. What other question? I think those are the end of questions, guys. And this has been a pleasure. And one thing that I noticed is that I thought half an hour was going to be a little long, but actually it just flew by, and we're actually at 45 minutes almost. So I need to stop now. And I just need to tell you guys that, first of all, thank you for joining me. And somebody here said, let's see, great speech from the heart. Thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate that. Yes, it is from the heart. And what else? I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to answer any more questions, but I can also on, I can continue in the private chat. But I thank you again for being here. I hope that you guys are home or wherever you are and you're safe and that your family members are all okay and your friends. And thank you for for all your participation and for your comments about my work. And be on the lookout for an invitation next year for my show. I would love for you to come and take 13 seconds to look at my work and like it or dislike it. That's fine. I know I'm going to, work hard to create at least a meaningful to me show about Venezuela and what has happened in the last 20 years or 20 plus 22 years after the election of a brutal dictator. So with that, I'm going to stop now. And, you're welcome to actually send me your questions via Messenger. I'll be happy to answer anytime that you send one. It doesn't have to be right now, but it could be later. All right. So with that, thank you to Rosalinda and to the people at the Latino Cultural Center again for this great invite. And this was fantastic. Um, let's see, I'm getting afraid to answer. Yes. All right. Well, thank you guys. And you have a great rest of your week. I will talk to you. Hopefully, we'll see you guys in person later. All right. Bye-bye. See you at my show next year, 2021.